Hello artist friends, let's evaluate the art The Postman. Van Gogh spent 1888 through 1889 living in the south of France and making several of his most famous pieces of art. During this time, Van Gogh became friends with a local postman, a man named Joseph Roulin, and created 6 different paintings with Roulin as the subject. Roulin was one of the first people that Van Gogh painted in southern France. Van Gogh wrote in several letters to his brother Theo that Roulin was a man more interesting than most. Van Gogh was fascinated with his facial proportions, skin tone, and overall demeanor. Van Gogh's The Postman is filled with a symphony of lines that create a sense of rhythm. The painting looks as if it is literally moving with brushstrokes. Don't the lines in Roulin's beard remind you of the waving, flowing lines in the cypress trees in Van Gogh's Starry Night? Another example of rhythm in this painting is the broad brushstrokes and thick paint, repeated lines, especially in the background. Notice his striking use of complementary colors. The greens complement the pinkish red, and the blues of Roulin's uniform complement the golden orange hues of his skin. The colors appear brighter when placed next to their complement, and this makes the painting pop with contrasts. The techniques used in this painting were new to the art scene at the time and inspired many painters and art movements after Van Gogh. The Postman is a triumph of all that is loved in post-impressionism and is a brilliant example of Van Gogh's unique and wonderfully recognizable style. So in this painting, where does your eye go first, right? It's a portrait. So the artist wants us to look just right at the middle, right at that face, and we see this beautiful golden hued face, and I think that it just stands out so much, like I said before, because of the complementary colors. We've got the blues complementing the oranges, and that just leads us right to the middle there. And we talked a little bit about rhythm too, and where do you see rhythm? So possibly like right here, I just see it's almost like this symphony of lines in the beard. You can also see the brushstrokes on his face, and when we put those short, tiny lines right next to each other in that repetitive fashion, it creates movement. We can also see some rhythm in the background with the lines, and they change directions. And then I love these swooping lines of the flowers. So all of that is just making like this symphony on the canvas. So let's look at this amazing beard. How would you describe this postman's beard? Like what textures repeated? And let's especially look at the line. So a lot of times when we draw hair, we kind of end up drawing straight lines, right? But this down here, there's all these curves, and we're actually gonna draw kind of the outside of those curves when we recreate it. But then we have all these lines inside, and notice they're all curved, even if they change directions to really show that undulating curvature of that awesome beard. Okay, now we talked about the blue and orange as our complementary colors, but I also feel like when you use red and green, I feel like that's like kind of the most complementary of all that makes it pop. And I love, love, love this green background. And then we've got these red poppies in there. And we do have some red in his face and his lips. And even when you talk about red, you can put orange in there. So we've got the reddish and the greens, and then we've got the blues and the yellows and oranges. And so this whole entire painting, I'd say like this is one of the best example of complementary colors you can get.